Hello everyone, this is part 1 review video on gravitation. So if you look at the overall coverage of chapter, we have at the very beginning the idea of gravitation and the law of gravitation that talks about how we can find out the gravitational force between 2 point masses. We'll see how the Newton's law of gravitation is proposed and what is the basis for that. Then we'll learn the idea of gravitational field and particularly the field strength. Then of course relating to that we have an idea of acceleration due to gravity. This is particularly because of a planet or satellites of planets, like we can talk about what is the acceleration due to gravity on the moon and things like that. Okay, then we will look at the idea of gravitational potential energy and gravitation potential, the relation between field and potential. So this is something that we will see just analogous to this, right? We will also see a relation between the electric field and electrostatic potential when we go to the +2 topic of electrostatics, where we will talk about the electric field and electrostatic potential. So in a way, right, the things that we are studying up to here, we will see analogous things that will get kind of replicated in electrostatics chapter also up to this point. Then we have the idea of the gravitation binding energy, because if you want to throw an object from the surface of the earth up, you will see that it will go to some distance and then fall down. But whereas the rocket will be given a certain velocity so that it will never be able to come back, isn't it? So the objects will be bound to the planet because of the gravitational force. So the objects can escape from the gravitational pull of the earth or any planet surface when you provide them with a minimum velocity. That is what we call as the escape velocity. So we will see, from the idea of binding energy concept, we will talk about what is the escape velocity of different planets. Then we will look at the motion of satellites. Here we will talk about the concept of orbital velocity of satellite and time period, things like that. Energy of the satellite in an orbit. All these things we will cover in the motion of satellites. Then we have the kind of very important laws that has provided more insights into our understanding of the universe, which are Kepler's laws of planetary motion. So we have 3 laws. We'll look at them in detail. So what we'll do is in part 1, because we said in the beginning itself, right, this is part 1. So in part 1 we will try to cover from the Newton's law of gravitation up to the relation between gravitational field and potential. So we'll talk about the Newton's law of gravitation, then we'll learn about the idea of gravitational field and field strength, then acceleration due to gravity concept, then gravitation potential energy and potential. So all these things we'll cover in the part 1. Part 2 video we'll look at the binding energy of planet, escape velocity concept, then motion of satellites and the Kepler's laws of planetary motion. Okay, so we'll just get started with the Newton's experience. Okay, so while you may put it in a comical way as much as possible, the thing that is generally said, because nobody has really checked whether this has happened or not, the thing that is generally said is one fine day Newton was sitting under the tree and he observed that the apple fell down, and the idea that every object when it is cut off, it will fall towards the earth. Rather, it will be falling in such a way that it will be approaching the center of the earth, because every object is experiencing a force towards the center of the earth. And this force is of course what we call as the gravitational force. This is the force that exists not only between an object like apple and earth here, but this force will exist between any two masses. So any two masses, they will attract each other because of their mass, and that's what we call as the gravitational force. So the Newton's law of gravitation, it quantifies this force. So Newton performed experiments using small spherical objects. So he has performed the experiment using small spherical objects, where he has seen how the force of attraction between the spheres will depend upon the masses of these spheres and distance between the centers of the spheres. So that's how he has performed the experiments. But the Newton's law of gravitation as such, right, we will say we propose it for the point masses. So the idea of point mass, right, is something that we have seen even in mechanics discussion, like kinematics and all. What we used to say, we say point mass. Point mass means the mass located at a single point. That's what we call as a point mass, which is a theoretical idea. So the Newton's law of gravitation basically talks about what is the magnitude of this attractive force between two masses. Okay, so every body in universe will attract every other body with a force which is directly proportional to the product of their masses, and will be inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. See, observe this carefully. The gravitational force, electrostatic force, and even the magnetic force, as we go and study each of them, right, this inverse square relation to the distance, we'll see that this will be something common for all these forces. Just like what we are saying here, if you have two point masses A and B, this is having a mass m1, this is having a mass m2, the separation between them is r. Then the force of attraction between them, right, is directly proportional to the product of the masses, inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So it will be what, like proportional to 1 by r square. If you look at electrostatics, right, so this is something that we will see when we go to the +2. There what we will see is the force between two charges. Let's say we have two charges q1 and q2, which are separated by a distance r. Then the force will be proportional to product of magnitudes of the charges. Why? Because charge can be positive, charge can be negative also. So force will be proportional to product of the magnitudes of the charges and inversely proportional to square of the distance between the two charges. So in a way, right, as I said before, we will see quite a similarity. In fact, this similarity between these force relations, right, is what has given the idea of unified field theory. So maybe if you are interested, you can just go and read about it. So the unified field theory, right, it talks about how these three fields can be merged into one single expression. Of course, the unified field theory has never proved. Einstein has worked on this idea. The unified field theory concept is, it's like, we are seeing the three fields in different view, gravitation or electrostatic or magnetic, but all the fields can be unified into one single expression. If you want to put it in layman's terms, right, that is how we can see the unified field theory. Okay, that and all is a little bit beyond our purview, but what I am trying to say is the similarity between the expressions, right, this is something that we can notice. Okay, so if we keep an eye on these similarities, right, it will help us a lot in not only, understanding these concepts, but also remembering these final results or the formulae. Now whenever we have a proportionality relation, right, we can make this into an equation by putting a constant. So here the constant that we keep is called as a capital G, which we will be calling as a universal gravitational constant. So what is this capital G going to be called as? Universal gravitational constant. Why do we call it as universal? Because we are using the word universal before the gravitational constant. Why? Because we will see when even in Newton's laws of motion, right, we talked about every spring having a constant which we called as a spring constant. There we didn't use the word universal spring constant. Why? Because the spring constant will change from spring to spring, but this constant is not like that. It will be always a constant value. It will not change, and we will talk about it. Since its value will be always the same, we will call it as universal constant. Now one more important thing about the gravitational force is that the force, right, will be acting along the line joining the particles. Means the force will be acting along the line on which the two particles are present. You can see here the M1 is attracted by M2. That's what we call as F bar 1, 2. And M2 in turn will be attracted towards M1. So here another important thing is the Newton's law of gravitation also tells us how the gravitational force will satisfy the Newton's third law. As you can see, right, the force of attraction on M1 and force of attraction on M2, they both are what? Opposite in terms of direction and magnitude wise. So whatever the force acting on M1 because of M2, on M2 same amount of force will act. What is that? The force will be what? G M1 M2 by R square. So this will conclude that the gravitational force also satisfies the Newton's third law. Okay, so this is the idea of Newton's law of gravitation. This, though he has performed the experiments using small spherical objects, we will say this is valid for what? Point masses. And as we're discussing about this universal gravitational constant, right? So the value of this is obtained in laboratory first time by Cavendish. So this is something that we will not go into the details of it. Using the torsional balance experiment, right, he was able to determine the value of capital G. So here we look at what is the value of this capital G. The capital G value is 6.67 in 10 power minus 11. Just look at it, how small the value. Newton meter square per kg square. This is the value of capital G in SI system. Not only that, if you look at some of the JEE mains, right, previous, we will see that there will be a common question asking about what is the dimensional formula for the capital G. How do we get the dimensional formula? We have the force expression, right? What is the force expression between two masses? G M1 M2 by R square. Force is what? ML T power minus 2 is equal to G, dimensional formula. Both are masses, right? So M square. Distance square means L square. So look at this. 1M gets cancelled. So what is it? M power minus 1 L cube T power minus 2. So this is the dimensional formula for the capital G. So the dimensional formula is M power minus 1 L cube T power minus 2. So this is something, I mean, I will not say we will have to just by heart it as it is, but at least if you quickly look at the idea how to get the dimensional formula for capital G, right? If there is a question, means we will be able to safely answer it. Then when you look at the reason why we called the constant as a universal constant, right? What is it that we said? This constant will always have the same value, meaning the capital G value does not depend upon the nature and size of the bodies. So whatever the bodies between which we are finding this force, right, the G value will not depend upon the nature and size of the bodies. Also, it does not depend upon the nature of the medium between the two bodies. Like look at this, we have M1 and M2. We may keep them in air or we may keep them in vacuum. or we may keep them inside water or oil or some other medium. So whichever medium we keep, the value of capital G will not change. Why we are particularly talking about the medium is, when we go to the electrostatic force. See, why I am mentioning some of those things here is, when we go to electrostatics, we will be able to recall these things. When we go to electrostatic force, right, as we have seen, the formula is almost similar, right? There, the force between two charged particles is what? Proportional to the product of charge magnitudes divided by r square. So there we will put a constant. The constant we will represent this with the symbol K. Don't confuse this between the constant here and the spring constant. Of course, because of lack of symbols, right, we may use the same symbol in different cases. But the constant K here will be called as a Coulomb's constant. What is the constant going to be called as? Coulomb's constant. The thing about this K is K will depend upon the medium. Means if you have oil, K value will be something. If you have the medium between charges as water, K will be something. If you have the medium between the charged particles as air, K will be something. So the constant that will come in the force between charged particles. By the way, the formula or the expression that we have for the gravitational force, right, is given by the Newton's law of gravitation. The expression for the force between charged particles, right, that will be given by the Coulomb's law. That is the reason why the SI unit of charge, right? What is the SI unit of charge? Coulomb. So it is given in honor of Coulomb because he has proposed the Coulomb's law for the force between charged particles. So now coming back to this gravitational constant discussion, right? Since the value of G is very small, look at the value. What is the value? 6.67 10 power minus 11. Look at the force formula. What is the force between two masses? G m1 m2 by r square. The thing is, unless at least one of the masses is huge or large, at least one of them should be higher value, then only the gravitational force will be significant. Otherwise what? Otherwise the gravitational force will be having a very small value. Gravitation force will be very small value. If you look at normal, like, there is a, think of it, right, I have two markers in my hand. Maybe the mass of this is some 2 grams or 3 grams, the mass of this is some 5 grams. If you actually take the distance between them and put them in the formula, right, we will get the force between them to be very, very small, negligible. But when the gravitational force will be significant, when at least one of the masses is large. Okay, so that is the reason why the apple and earth, when you look at the force between them, right, the force is significant. Why? Because the earth is a large mass. Similarly, when you look at any two large celestial bodies like planets or the natural satellites, I mean natural satellites can be small also, but generally the force between them, or rather between sun and a planet, the gravitational force will be very significant. Why? Because the masses are huge. And generally, right, this point will again reiterate when we go to electrostatics. Generally, the gravitational force value will be comparatively insignificant when we try to compare this with the electrostatic force. I'll tell you the reason also. If you look at the K value, as we said, K value will change from medium to medium. But if you take the value of K for vacuum, the value of K in terms of SI unit is 9 into 10 power 9 Newton meter square per Coulomb square. This is the value of K in a vacuum. Now compare this with the value of capital G. What is it? 6.67 10 power minus 11. Look at the exponential part. Here what is it? 10 power minus 11. Here what is this? 10 to the power of plus 9. So when you compare as such the two forces, right, the gravitational force will be insignificant because the constant that comes in the formula, right, the expression for the force is very, very small. The universal gravitational constant is very small in comparison to the Coulomb's constant. Okay, so this is the story of universal gravitational constant. Now, if you look at the gravitational force, right? Let's say there are two objects. The gravitational force between the two objects, right, will be independent of anything that is there in the surroundings. Means the gravitational force between two bodies, right, is just because of the interaction between the two bodies, and it will be independent of whether there is some other thing present or absent in the surroundings. And hence we can use what we call as the principle of superposition. What is it? Like, think of it. We have a mass m. Surrounding we have like three masses, m1, m2, m3. If I ask you what is the net force acting on m, then net force acting on m, right? So m will experience a force because of m1. m1 will attract m. m2 also will attract m. m3 also will attract m. For each of them, right, we can write the formula. What is it? G m m1 by, let's say the distance is r1. Here what is it? G m m3 by r3 square. So here what is it going to be? G m m2 by r2 square. So the force between two particles, right, will be independent of anything that is there in the surroundings. And hence if somebody asks us what is the total force acting on the mass m, then what we have to do? We have to add these forces simply, that's it. But one thing we need to keep in mind is adding forces will not be like just adding 1 plus 2 plus 3, because we have to follow the, what is it? We have to follow the vector law of addition, isn't it? Why? Because here we are dealing with vector quantities. So the idea of principle of superposition is very simple. If you have a mass, surrounding there are many particles, they are asking what is the total force acting on the mass. Means on that mass we have to find what is the force because of each and every particle separate, and simply add all of them to get the resultant force or net force. Okay, so this is what is the principle of superposition. Now we said that though Newton has performed his experiments on small spherical objects where he has taken the center to center distance. What is the distance that he has taken? Center to center distance. That is what he has taken while doing the experiments. Let's see how we can find force between extended objects. So extended object means what? There is no limit. Extended object means there is no limit, right? So here what we will do is we look at some particular cases. First, how do we find the force between a spherical body and a point mass? So there is a spherical body m1 and a point mass. This is the point mass. In this case, right, let us say r is the distance from m2. m2 is the point mass to the center of m1. So here one thing that we need to keep in mind is the particle m2 is outside the spherical body. Okay, then the force of attraction between them is given by G m1 m2 by r square. So what is the thing that we need to keep in mind? The r will be what? The distance from point mass to the center of the sphere. Similarly, this is what is the case that Newton really did his experiment with. If you want to find the force between two spherical bodies, so what is the distance we have to take? Center to center distance. So here what will be the formula? G m1 m2 by r square. What is this r? It is the center to center distance. Now the general is what? You have a enlarged or extended object m1 and another extended object m2. It can be of any shape. This is the general case. In general case, right, we cannot straight away use that for just because here we have a mass m1, here we have a mass m2. We cannot straight away say that okay, the force between them is G m1 m2 by r square. Why? Because what is this r? How do we measure the r? So if we have finite size bodies, right, we cannot use the Newton's law of gravitation formula. Why? Because we will not have any unique value for the separation. So separation between the objects means, do we take this or do we take this or do we take this? We will not have a unique value. So in this case, what we have to do is, we have to take the integration approach to find the force between the two finite shape objects. How do we do it? We will see through some specific examples. But this is the idea. We will not be able to straight away use that formula. So let us look at this. There is a mass m, which is at a distance a from one end of the rod. So rod is having a mass capital M and length L. We have to find the gravitational force acting on the mass due to the rod. So as you can see, right, the rod is like what? It is an, what is this? It is an extended object. The rod is an extended object. So what we'll do is, from this end of the rod, we will mark some portion of the rod at a distance x. The spread or the length of this small portion, right, let us call as dx. Now what is the linear mass density of rod? It will be equal to mass of the rod by the length. Then mass of that small element dx, right, let's say we call it as dm. What is it? Its length into the linear mass density. So this is the mass of that small element. The small element will attract the point mass. What is the force? That will be a small value, right? It will be what? G into dm into m by, what is the distance between them? This is a, this is x. What is this? A plus x the whole square. So G into, what is this? Small m by a plus x the whole square. This is the small force. Now any element you take of the rod, they will attract the point mass in the same direction. Means we can simply add the forces. Otherwise we know force is a vector. What is the force? Force is a vector, right? We cannot simply add it. But since all the forces will be in the same direction, we can add them. Adding means here we have to do what? Integration. Adding means what we need to do here? We have to integrate it. So to get the overall force, right, what we have to do is, starting from this end, right, x is equal to 0. We have to integrate up to x is equal to L. Means take all these small elements from one end of the rod to the other end. So the overall force is given by what? The x value has to change from 0 to L. That is the integration. What is it that we have to integrate? G capital M small m dx by L into a plus x the whole square. So in this constants we will take out G capital M small m by L, that will come out, integral 0 to L dx by a plus x the whole square. Now we will have to, of course, brush our fundamentals of integration. I mean, it's not a very tough integration as such, but what is this integral dx by a plus x the whole square? That will be, I mean, if you look at it, right, it will be a plus x whole power minus 1, because what is the, I mean, no, if you look at it like integral x power n dx, right, what is integral x power n dx? It will be x power n plus 1 by n plus 1, correct? So a plus x whole power minus 1 by minus 1, which is what? Gmm by L into minus 1 by a plus x. We have to substitute the limits. Now if we substitute the limits means we will get the final answer. So how do we substitute the limits? Gmm by L minus 1 by a plus L minus of minus 1 by a. Final limit minus initial limit. So minus minus will become plus. So we are going to get the final value of the force. This, of course, once we get it right, this is a very standard force expression. So what is it? We'll have Gmm by L. We'll have 1 by A minus 1 by A plus L. We'll take in the LCM. So Gmm by L. So A plus L minus A by A into A plus L. So A gets cancelled. Then L also gets cancelled. So what is this? Gmm by A into A plus L. So this is what is the force expression. What is the force expression? Gmm by A into A plus L. So that is what is the force acting on the point mass because of the extended body. Now, if we look at the force between two extended bodies, so maybe we'll just write down the final answer here. So what is the final answer we are getting? That is the force acting on the point mass because of the rod. What is it? It will be what? The final force expression is G mm by A into A plus L. Now, as I said, right, if we want to find the force between two extended bodies, then what we have to do? We have to take a small portion of one object, like the way we did it, right? Like think of it like a rod. The way we have done, we have to find what is the force acting on this small portion because of the rod. And then in this way we have to find what is the force acting on each and every small portion because of this rod. Rod means the second object. Okay, so rod means what is it here? Second object. And then we have to do the addition of it. So it is going to be more mathematically rigorous in terms of the calculation, and even you can check JEE advanced level also. We will not get questions where we have to do the force between two extended bodies. I mean the general case I am talking about. Most of the cases what we will get is this one. Like we have one point mass and one finite object or extended body. Now when we talk about the gravitational force, right, the gravitational force, electrostatic force, magnetic force, these are actually called as field forces. So what is the other word that we use for them? Field forces. Why do we call them as field forces? Is because they operate through field. What is it? The forces, they operate through the concept of field. What is this field concept? Like here we'll talk about the gravitational field. Now, whenever we have, say for example, there is a mass. Every mass around itself, right, will produce what we call as a gravitational field. Every mass around itself will produce a gravitational field in the surroundings. Now here the gravitational field can be quantified because it's something that can be felt, but we have to quantify it. We will quantify it by using two quantities. One is the gravitational field strength, which we can represent as a vector. We will use the symbol E bar. Other is the gravitational potential. For this we will use the symbol V. So what are we saying? Whenever there is a mass, it will produce gravitational field around it. It can be felt. But how do we quantify it? We will quantify it either by using a vector quantity field strength or by using a scalar quantity called potential. We will talk about that also. So here what we will do is we will start discussing with the gravitational field strength. So what is the gravitational field strength? It is a vector quantity to represent or to quantify the gravitational field at a location. So how do we find what is the field at location? For this, the relation between the gravitational field and the gravitational force. Like say for example, there is gravitational field in a region. I mean, so you might be thinking, why am I drawing these lines like that? Here we don't talk about the lines concept, but when we go to the electrostatics and magnetism, right, to represent how the field is existing in a region, we will represent that by using the concept of field lines. So what is the concept that we use? We'll use the concept of field lines. Okay, that's the reason why I'm just trying to draw the lines. Okay, so that is basically to know that, okay, there is something there. Let us say we put a mass here. Usually we will use a small mass, which we can also call as test mass. The purpose is it will not disturb whatever is there in the surroundings. Let's say we keep a test mass here. At this location there will be a field already because of the surrounding whatever the mass is already present. There will be a field that will be existing here. Field means the field strength. The force acting on this mass, right, is given by, this is the relation between the field at the location and what will be the force acting on a mass that you place at the location. If you are keeping a mass small m, right, the force acting on the mass small m will be equal to what? Mass of the particle that you are keeping there times the gravitational field strength there. What is it? Mass of the particle times the gravitational field strength. So this is how we'll, so in a way, right, how do we find out what is the field strength at a location means? We'll put a small mass which we call as test mass, find what is the force acting on it. So how do you find E bar? F by m. So just take the other side. So here we can talk about what is the SI unit of gravitational field. What is the SI unit of gravitational field? Newton per kg. Also they can ask us what is the dimensional formula. Dimensional formula means what? Force is ml t power minus 2 by m. So what is it? L t power minus 2. That is the dimensional formula for the gravitational field strength. So this is about the idea of gravitational field strength. And the thing is, in some textbooks, or rather not just textbooks, in some cases, right, they will also refer the gravitational field strength as acceleration due to gravity. So what is it? The gravitational field strength, right, can be also called as what? Acceleration due to gravity. So why do we say that? Think of it. Let's say we have a test mass, we are keeping it at a location. So the field strength at the location is E. Now what is the force acting on the mass? Just now we discussed, right? What will be the force acting on the mass? Mass of the times the field strength at the location. Now use our normal mechanics idea. What is the mechanics idea? If there is a force acting on the object, the force acting on the object will be generating acceleration inside the object, correct? What is the relation? F is equal to ma, Newton's second law. Now here, what is the force value? Mass of the particle times the field strength at the location. Just equate both of them, m gets cancelled. So what is this? So this acceleration is coming because of what? Gravitational force, right? That's why we also call it as acceleration due to gravity. So when we say acceleration due to gravity means at that location, whatever is the gravitational field strength, right, that is what we also call as acceleration due to gravity. Means any mass you keep there means how much acceleration the mass will get because of gravitational force. The acceleration will be just equal to what? The field strength value at the location, that's it. That is the reason why you can check what is the unit, Newton per kg. What is Newton per kg means? What is Newton? Kg meter per second square, right? So what is it? Meter per second square. Even look at the dimension formula. What is dimension formula? Lt power minus 2. What is Lt power minus 2? That is the dimensional formula for the acceleration, right? Okay. So this is about the reason why we call the gravitational field strength as acceleration due to gravity. Now we said the gravitational field is produced by the masses. Any mass we keep means it will produce the field around itself. But here we will see what is the gravitational field produced by a point mass. So we will take a point mass, the capillum, at a distance r from it. We will put a test mass small m. Okay, so there can be a question, why we always use the test mass to be small value? Because a test mass means we are bringing it to a location, right? It should not be a large value, because a large value means it will disturb the other masses in the neighborhood or surroundings. So they should be always maintained small. Now just now only we have seen, right, based on the Newton's law of gravitation, what will be the force acting on this test mass? G capillum small m by r square. That will be attracted towards the capillum, and this is the force. But as per the concept of gravitational field strength, if at this location the field strength is E, the mass is small m, so what is the force acting on the mass? Small m times E, that's it, right? So small m gets cancelled, so what do we have? The value of E is equal to what? G capillum by r square. So think of it, we said no other mass is there in the surrounding, only this is the one point mass we have taken. Because of this point mass capillum, at a distance r from it, what is the gravitational field strength produced? G capillum by r square. Means as you go farther and farther from the mass, the field strength value will keep on decreasing. As you go farther and farther, the field strength value will keep on decreasing. And the other thing, what about the direction part? Let's say here the left side is what we call as, because we want to give a direction means, let's say minus I cap. So in this force, right, what will keep minus I cap? Force expression. So the E, if you want to express it as a vector, it will come as what? Into minus I cap will come. Means the gravitational field produced by a point mass, right? Minus I cap means here what is it? Whichever mass is producing the field will be towards that mass. Okay, so which means, let's say I have a point mass here. This is a point mass. Okay, we will mark a location at some point. Let's say this is the location. Here the field means it will be in what direction? Towards the mass. This is the direction of field. This is the point mass. So whenever we talk about the field produced by point mass, it will be, because field is what? It's a vector quantity. It will be always towards the mass which is producing the field. So this is about the gravitational field produced by a point mass. And just like the principle of superposition we have used in the case of gravitational force, here also we can use principle of superposition. Means what? Let's say we have a location. Surrounding we have M1, we have M2, we have M3. Like that we have many more masses. Each of these masses will produce a field. So we call it as what? E1 vector, it's a vector, okay? So E2, then we can call it as E3, then we can call it as what? E4. So if you want to, this is a point P or location P. The overall field at the location P will be given by what? Overall field will be what? It will be given by the vector addition of all the fields acting, because each field will act independently. That's why we can use the principle of superposition. That's it. Just like the way we have done in the case of the forces also, same way we will have the principle of superposition in the case of the gravitational field. Okay. Now talked about the gravitational field because of a point mass. How do we find what is the gravitational field due to the extended bodies or extended objects? For this we will just go back to the linear rod, right? If you are looking at the previous example, what we did, we found what is the force acting on the point mass. distance a from one of the ends. On the same line, we keep a point mass. This is the point mass, right? This is the point mass. The rod is having a mass capital M. Then the force acting on this, remember what is it? Force acting on this is what? G capital M small m by A into A plus L. This is the formula we already got. If at this location the field strength is E, this field is produced by what? The rod. Then as per the field theory, what is it? The force acting on the point mass is given by what? The mass of the particle times the field at the location. See here, small m gets cancelled. So from here what we will get? G into capital M by A into A plus L. This is the field produced by the rod. What is it? Of the rod of mass capital M and length L. Okay, so this is the rod. Now on the same line, you take a point at distance A. This is the point. What is the field at that point? It will be given by what? G capital M by A into A plus L. But this is one example that we are seeing. But generally, how do we find the field because of a extended body or a finite body? By doing the integration. Like we'll have to take small elements. The same rod example, right? Here I got the result because we already seen that. Otherwise, what we will do? Think of it. We will say the rod will be divided into small elements. Like, we will say we have taken an element of spread dx at a distance x from this end. So this element will produce a field here, right? What is the field value? That will be a small field. What is it? G into the mass of the element divided by distance will be a plus x the whole square. Same way, the mass of the element is what? The linear mass density into the element length. As it is what we did. The only thing is now we have to integrate it. That's it. There we did the integration for the force. Here we will do integration for what? The field. But one thing is whenever we are doing integration, before integration, right, we have to keep one thing in mind. Check whether all these are in the same direction. Here also, any element you take, the field will be always in the same direction. That's why we are able to integrate it. Okay. So vectors we cannot straight away integrate. Only when all of them are in the same direction, we can add them. Because integration means what? Like normal, simple addition. That can be done only for the scalars. Or when we know that everything is in the same direction. Okay. So this is about the field due to the linear rod. And even we can find the field due to other finite bodies, like we have a field due to the ring. So you take a ring of mass m, a radius capital R. If you mark a point on the axial line at a distance small r, the field at the point will be G into mass of the ring into small r by capital R square plus small r square whole power 3 by 2. So we are not going into the derivation of how this comes, but just take it as a result. So again, as I said, right, this also will come through the integration approach. How? I'll just tell you once. So here what we will do is we will take a small element of that ring. The field will be towards that element. Here we have to take the components of the field. We have to take the components of the field, and what we will see is the due to symmetry, right? The component along the axial line will add. Like we can take another element exactly symmetrically opposite. The components perpendicular to the axial line, they will cancel. So net we will have the field which is along the axial line towards center of the ring. So here it will be what? It will be towards the center of the ring. And here I want you to observe one thing. If the point P is very far means what? This small r will be very high in comparison to capital R. Think of it. Small r is very high means what? We can neglect capital R. R square power 3 by 2 means r cube. So what is it? Look at it. G capital M R by small r cube. So what is it? This is like, the ring is like a point mass, right? The same formula will come when you take a point which is very far. And of course we can also say what is the field at the center of the ring. What will be the field at the center of the ring? We have to put small r is equal to 0, right? Put small r equal to 0. What is it? Okay, so at the center of the ring, what is the field value? It will be what? 0. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind. Now, one of the specific shapes that we will be more interested in is spherical shell and a solid sphere. Okay, so spherical shell or a shell in general, what is it? We will have the mass only on the outer surface. What is spherical shell? Mass will be only on the outer surface. A solid sphere means what? The mass will be in the entire volume of the body. Solid sphere means mass will be in the entire volume of the body. That is what is a solid sphere. So we will see the field due to the spherical shell, right? Here we will have an important theorem. We will not have that. Theorem basically means what? We will not have the rigorous proof here. That's why we are giving it as a theorem. But we will see analogous to this when we go to electrostatics in +2, right? We will see the proof also for a theorem like this. But here we will just see the result. The theorem is what we call as the shell theorem. So shell theorem is to find the field because of a spherical shell or a hollow sphere. Spherical shell means what is it? It can be also called as a hollow sphere. Okay, for that we will look at, we look at a point outside and point inside. So we will give the shell theorem in 2 statements. If a point lies outside the spherical shell, then the field created by the shell, right? So here the shell that we are assuming is having symmetric mass distribution, means mass is symmetrically distributed. Let's say the shell is having a radius R. Mass is uniformly distributed on the entire surface area of, how much will be the surface area? 4 pi r square. Such a shell is what you are taking. The field produced by the shell at a point outside will be just like if the entire mass of the shell is concentrated at its center, means instead of the shell, right, just to take one single point. Forget about there is a shell. Let's say the shell is having a mass capital. What we say is in that center of the shell, just think of there is a point mass m. Whatever is the field created by the point mass, right? See, this is the point we are marking outside. What is the formula for the field by a point mass? Gm by r square, right? The field will be towards the mass. Correct. So what is this r here? Distance from the point mass, where we have to keep the point mass at the center, which means the field at a point outside, what is it? It will be g mass of the shell divided by r square. Here what is this r? R is the distance from center of the shell to the point. So this is the first part of the shell theorem, means forget about the shell, just think of there is a point mass at the center of the shell. Whatever is the field created, right, that will be what? The field at the point which is outside. Then one of the what we can call as the limiting cases. Limiting case means if the point is on the surface, means what? The distance of the point from the center of the shell will be what? The radius of the shell capital. That is when the point will be on the surface. Okay, so on the surface means what is the field value? G capital by r square will come. That is the field because of the shell on the surface. Now if the point is lying inside the uniform spherical shell, then the gravitational, so wherever the point, so here the point can be anywhere inside. When we say point is inside, means it can be anywhere. It can be a point here, or it can be a point here, it can be anywhere. Any point you take inside the uniform spherical shell, the gravitational field at the point is going to be what? 0. So uniform spherical shell will create a field at any point you take outside, given by which formula? G capital by small r square. What is small r? Always the notation is important. whenever we use the smaller, right, that is representing what distance of the point from the center of the shell. Okay, on the surface means what is it? The limiting value, where the point distance from the center of the shell will be what? Radius of the shell. Then if you take a point inside the shell, anywhere inside the shell, what is the gravitational field because of the symmetric shell? 0. So this is what we call as the shell theorem. Now we can even, because sometimes we may get particularly questions in terms of the graphical representation. So look at it. Inside means what is it? E is equal to 0. Inside means what? We are plotting the field with respect to the distance from the center of the shell. See here, where is the curve? It is lying on the x-axis. Means all this is what it is representing. E is equal to 0 till the point is the point on the surface. Suddenly when it is on surface, what is the field value? Gm by Kepler square. Surface means what is the value? In fact, that is where the field is maximum. After that, when you are moving outside, right, what is the formula? G capital M by small r square. You can see the relation is what? As r is increasing, the field value will keep on decreasing. Inverse square relation, correct? So you can see it will keep on decreasing forever. So this is how we can graphically represent the field because of a spherical shell or a hollow sphere, and the result is what we call as the shell theorem. Now using the shell theorem result, right, we can find what is the field due to a solid sphere. So again, field due to a solid sphere means we can mark point outside, a point on the surface, and point inside the sphere. We can have point outside, on the surface, or inside the sphere. So we are not going through the complete derivation part of it, but we look at the result. For a point outside, it will be similar to what we have in the case of the shell. So if you are measuring the distance from the center of the sphere to be smaller, then what is the field value? Gm by small r square. On the surface, same limiting case. Inside only we will have a difference. So maybe in the detailed video you can go through the derivation part of it. Inside the field value will be Gm into small r by capital R cube. So inside means we are marking a point inside. Smaller will be what? Distance from the center of the sphere to the point. The field inside will be what? Gm into small r by capital R cube. So these are the three scenarios we can have. One is point outside, on the surface, and point inside. Now graphically, how do we represent it? The way we have discussed, right? So here this is given by what? The field, how it is varying. Like we have a solid sphere, we are measuring how the field is varying with respect to the distance from the center of the sphere. So this is the center of the sphere. We are seeing how the field varies with respect to center of this, with respect to distance from center of the sphere. So this is what? G capital M into small r by capital R cube. So in this it's like what? This is all a constant. It's like what? Y is equal to mx type. Straight line passing through origin till you come to surface. Surface means what is it? Gm by capital R square, maximum. After that, what is the function? As the smaller is increasing, the function value will keep on decreasing, the field value will keep on decreasing. Inverse square relation. So this is the graph for the field due to a solid sphere. So not only the expressions are important, but even the graphical representation is also important. Now the solid sphere, right, is what we'll assume is the shape of, approximate shape of the earth or any other planet or natural satellites for that matter. Of course, we'll have some variations, but we'll generally consider them to be of that shape. Now we have seen just now what is the gravitational field created by a solid sphere. If you take the earth to be a sphere, right? If you bring a mass near the earth, then it will experience acceleration because of the attraction of the earth. That is what we call as acceleration due to gravity. And as we already discussed, right, what is this acceleration due to gravity? This is nothing but the field created by the earth. So what is this? This is the field created by the earth, right? So how do we find out? Just like what we have, like we take the earth to be a sphere, then we'll have three cases. One is if the point you are marking is outside. So here we'll generally use the acceleration due to gravity with a symbol small g. Outside means what is the formula for the field? This is outside. If you take a point on the surface, it will be what? Gm by capital square. This is on the surface. So here we don't need to do any more derivation, because as it is, whatever the result that we got, we are just going to use it. If you mark a point inside the earth, so here what is the formula for the field? It will be what? This is inside the earth. So first we will start our discussion with the field on the surface of the earth or the planet. So where do we begin? We will begin with the field on the surface of the planet, or rather the field on the surface of particularly earth. So what is the formula for that? It will be what? G capital M by capital R square. So here what we need to keep in mind is the acceleration due to gravity on the surface of a planet, right? It depends upon what? It depends upon mass of the planet and the radius of the planet. So these are some theoretical questions. Depends upon what mass of the planet. We can see capital M is coming here. What is it? Mass of the planet. What is capital R? The radius of the planet. Okay. Now that's very basic idea, but the important thing that we'll have to study here is how the acceleration due to gravity will actually have variations. Like if you go to a height h above the surface, acceleration due to gravity will change. If you go to depth d below surface, acceleration due to gravity will change. Acceleration due to gravity, because we assume the earth to be a perfect sphere, but earth is not perfect sphere, it has got irregular shape. We will see what will be the effect of that. Earth is not a static object, it will be in rotation. So because of the axial rotation of the earth, there will be an effect of this on the acceleration due to gravity. We will see that. And also, when we say sphere, we assume the sphere is having what? Symmetric or uniform mass distribution. Meaning, if you take, m to be the mass of the earth, right? It's a sphere. So the assumption is it will be distributed in the entire volume of 4 by 3 pi r cube uniformly. But in case of earth, practically it will not be like that. We will have some local variations in terms of the mass density. In some places or near some places, the mass density will be more. In some other places, the mass density will be less. So all these variations of the acceleration due to gravity, right? So first we will begin with the acceleration due to gravity, how it will vary with respect to height. So let's say, for example, we are looking at a point which is at a height h above the surface. Now for a point which is outside the sphere, right, what is the field formula? Gm by r square. R is smaller is the distance from center of the sphere to the location. So if you take capital R as the radius of the sphere, right, and sphere basically means that is the earth. So what is this smaller value going to be? Capital R plus h will come. So the g at a height h, what is it? It will be gm by r plus h the whole square. Now we can try to express this in terms of g on the surface of the earth. So what is the value of g on the surface of the earth? We will just write it here. So g on the surface of the earth, right, that is equal to capital Gm by r square. So from here, right, so small g into r square is equal to what? Capital Gm. So we'll just substitute it here. So g at a height h is equal to what? R square by r plus h the whole square. So if you just rearrange it, we'll have it like what? R by r plus h by r whole square. So what is it? G by 1 plus h by r whole square. So this is the g at a height h is the general formula. So we can also write it like this, g at a height h is equal to g into 1 plus h by r whole power minus 2, like that we can express. This is the general formula for the acceleration due to gravity at a height h. Now for most of the cases, right, what is the radius of the earth? Approximately, though like earth is not a perfect sphere, we'll have some variations, but approximately we can say the radius of the earth is 6,400 kilometers. Okay, if we are talking about a height which is like 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, 3 kilometer, the value of h will be very small in comparison to r. Under this assumption, right, so look at this, we can do a binomial simplification. So it's like what? This is like 1 plus x whole power n. So binomial, we have seen this in the basic math video also. The binomial simplification, binomial expansion is 1 plus nx plus n into n minus 1 by 1 into 2x square, like that. That's the binomial series. But if x is small, like in this case, if h is very small in comparison to r, means h by r is like our x is very small in comparison to 1, then the higher powers of x, if x itself is like, maybe 10 power minus 3, then x square will be what? 10 power minus 6, x cube will be what? 10 power minus 9, like that. So all the other higher power terms can be neglected because their value will be very, very small. So we can neglect all the other things. We will be left with what? Just the first and second term, first two terms. So we will have the simplified formula. What is it? 1 plus n. So here n value is what? Minus 2 into x. X is what? H by r. So what is it? G into 1 minus 2h by r. This is what we call as the simplified formula. And we have to keep one thing in mind when we will use it. When we know for sure that the height that we are referring to is very small in comparison to the radius of the earth. Like radius of the earth value is 6,400 kilometers. If we are talking about a height which is like 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer or 10 kilometer, like that, then we can use the simplified. So this is what is the binomial simplification. Okay, so this is the binomial simplification, the formula that will come from that. Okay, and the one that we are having here is the general formula. So we have to keep this in mind clearly that we have one simplified formula, one general formula. The next one is about the acceleration due to gravity at a depth. So from the surface, we will mark a point at a depth. Now this point will be what? This is like a point inside. Remember the distance of the point from center of the earth, let us say small r. So here we will see one relation, small r plus d is equal to what? Capital R, means small r is equal to what? Capital R minus d. And what is the formula for the field inside the sphere? Field inside the sphere will be gm into small r by capital R cube. So what is it? This is like g at depth d formula, right? So gm, smaller is what? Capital R minus d. So here we will keep r square, just take the r inside. So r by r minus d by r. So r by r will be 1. So what is it? G at depth d is equal to, this is the g on the surface, g into 1 minus d by r. This is one formula. So we don't have two formulas here, just one formula for acceleration due to gravity at depth. Similarly, when we talked about the earth as a sphere, right, so we've been saying that earth is not a perfect sphere. So in fact, if you take a closer look at it, right, like you can see, it will be somewhat flat at the poles. So if you just look at the acceleration due to gravity formula, right, on the surface of a planet, what is the formula? Gm by r square we are saying, isn't it? So this is a radius, so to say. Radius means what? You have to measure the distance from center. So the r value on the equator side will be higher, whereas the r value on the other side means what? Towards the poles, it will be what? Lesser. So look at this, g at poles, what is it? R poles square. G at equator, right, what is it? Gm by r at the equator square. Now what we are observing is this equator side, the r is more. When denominator is more means what? The g will be, so here the r is more, so g will be what? Less comparatively. Pole side, the r will be less, so g will be more. So what is the conclusion here? G near the equator will be what? Lesser than g near the polar region. So why is it happening? Because of the irregular shape of the earth. Earth is not a perfect sphere. And as I said, right, earth is not a static body. It keeps rotating about its axis. So it will have the axis of rotation. What happens as a result of this rotation is, because when we have any object which itself is rotating, right, then when we talk about the acceleration due to gravity, one, of course, the earth will pull any object towards the center. So there will be acceleration that is going to come because of it. That's what we normally call as the acceleration due to gravity, g. But because of the rotational effect, we will have to give, because the object which is on the rotating body, that also will keep rotating, right? The object will keep going in a circular path. So we will have to assign a pseudo acceleration. Now the overall acceleration due to gravity that we say will be what? It will be given by the resultant of the actual g and the pseudo acceleration part. So remember, we talked about the pseudo acceleration whenever the frame of reference, which is the person here, the person or whatever object which is on the surface of the earth, that itself is in rotational motion or it is in circular motion, then we have to assign, if the observer is in motion, we have to assign what? The pseudo acceleration. So the resultant of the two is what we will consider as the effective value of g. So if we consider the earth, where let's say we will mark a point which is at a latitude angle of phi. So basically, what is the latitude angle? So from the equatorial plane, we will measure the angle, right? That's what we call as the latitude angle. So at equator, the latitude angle will be 0, and when we go to the polar region, the angle will become what? 90. So here the point that we are marking, because it is rotating along with the earth, so look at it, it will have the original value of acceleration due to gravity, that is towards center, and since it will be the particle which goes in a circular path, let's say the radius of circular path is smaller, it will have a pseudo acceleration. What is pseudo acceleration? Either v square by r or r omega square, where omega is what? The angular velocity of rotation of earth. Okay, so here the thing is, since the particle is rotating in a circular path, when the particle itself is observed, right, we have to assign the pseudo acceleration. This is something that we have seen already in the Newton's laws of motion. Just check that idea once. When the observer is a non-inertial frame, there are two types of non-inertial frame. One is the non-inertial frame which is going with an acceleration. Second is the non-inertial frame which is in rotational motion or circular motion. Now here, if you look at it, right, Kepler is the radius of the earth. You can see the properties of angles, right? this angle will be what, phi. So cos phi will be equal to what, smaller by capital R, means capital R into cos phi is equal to what, smaller. So if you observe it, right, the angle between pseudo acceleration and I'll just erase the other thing so that we can just write down that part. The angle between pseudo acceleration and so this is the equatorial. So the angle, so this is phi. So the angle between the pseudo acceleration and the normal acceleration due to gravity is what, 180 minus phi. So we have to find the resultant of two vectors, right? What is the resultant formula? Two vectors, root of a square plus b square plus 2 into ab into cos of theta. What is theta? Angle between the two vectors is what, 180 minus phi. So what is cos of 180 minus phi? Minus cos phi. So this is what is the formula for effective g. Now this can be simplified. This effective g can be simplified by using like the way we have done before, right, under some assumptions that we are going to consider. So the Earth's angular velocity omega is going to be very small. So in a way, if you look at this r omega square, it will be a small quantity. So when you square it, r square omega power 4 will be even more smaller. So we can just neglect it. Then what is it? It's like, you know, we'll have g square minus 2gr omega square cos phi whole power half. So from here we'll take g square common out. Then what we'll have is g will come out, 1 minus 2r omega square by g into cos phi whole power half. Now again, like the way we have done the binomial simplification, right, since r omega square is small, we can just consider the first and second terms of the binomial expansion, which is what, 1 plus nx. 1 plus n here is half. Half into x is what, minus 2r omega square by g into cos phi. So 2 gets cancelled. So finally what we will be having is g into 1 minus r omega square by g into cos phi. So what is small r, by the way? Small r is equal to, already we have seen, right, it is what, capital R into cos phi. So substituting it, what we will have is g into 1 minus capital R omega square cos square phi by g. We will multiply g inside. So final answer, I will just write it. So maybe in our detailed video you can look at how the result comes. So the idea here is just to understand how this is coming, the final formula. Okay, the final simplified formula is we will be using in most of the cases. So the last step is what, the remaining step is just the multiplication part. So multiply both the terms, distributive. So g minus r omega square cos square phi into g by g. So what is it? G minus r omega square cos square phi. That's it. So that is what is the final expression. So what is the final expression? The effective g will be equal to what? The true value of g minus r omega square cos square phi. Now here the observation is, at equator, since phi is 0, that is when cos phi will be what, 1. So you can see we are subtracting the maximum quantity from the normal value of g, which means what, the g effective or g dash will be what, minimum at equator. Already remember we got the same result from our previous thing also, which is about the irregular shape of the earth. There also, because the equator side the distance is longer, what is the conclusion we have done? G near the equator will be lesser. So here also we are getting same conclusion. Because of the rotational effect also, g at the equator will be less. Whereas if you talk about the polar region, right, so polar region means phi is what, 90. So cos 90 will be 0. So the effect of rotation, so remember this, the effect of rotation will not be much at polar region. Why? Because look at the expression, what is the latitude angle, it is what, 90. So the effect of the rotation will not be felt at the polar region. But definitely as we move from polar region to the equator, we can see that the effect of G will change significantly. Okay. The other thing is the local variations of mass density. Like in some place, right, we have say for example iron mines or some heavy metal location. Locally the mass density is what? High. When the mass density is high means, think of it, any other object you keep there, like say we are keeping some other object here, definitely that object will be pulled more strongly, right, because there is more mass density of the earth that is accumulated there. So as a result, what happens is, in places where you have mines or deposits of heavy metals etc., where there is a large mass density locally, in that place we will see that G will be, so these variations will not be so prominent. In that place we will see that G will be considerably more than the other places. That's the only thing. So this is how the acceleration due to gravity value will change depending upon the various factors. One is at a height, then depth. These are the two important ones. Then we have seen the effect of irregular shape of the earth and also the effect of the rotational effect and local variations. The next idea is about gravitational potential energy and potential. So the gravitational force is a conservative force. So we have seen this in the work energy power. We have derived what is the gravitational potential energy. Of course, there we have done a simplified derivation to see what is the gravitational potential energy. So there what it is, on the surface of the earth we will take the potential energy to be 0. If we go to a height, means the potential energy at the height h will be equal to what? mgh. This is what we have seen in the work energy theorem. But here when we talk about the gravitational potential energy of two masses, again the same idea. So how the derivation happens is, the work done by the conservative forces, any conservative force, that will be equal to what? Negative of change in potential energy. So just take a look at the potential energy definition that we have given in the work energy power topic. So this is the idea. Work done by the conservative force is equal to what? Negative of the change in potential energy. Using this, if you have, say for example, two masses m1 and m2, we assume that when they are separated by infinite distance, the potential energy is 0. That is the reference. Just like when we take the potential energy of the object on surface of the earth is what? 0, right? That is the reference in our previous work energy power discussion, right? But here what is the absolute reference? When the two masses are infinite distance, we will take the potential energy of the two masses will be what? 0. So when they are at a separation of r, the potential energy will be equal to what? Minus g m1 m2 by r. So there is a significance for the minus. The negative energy indicates that the two masses are bound system. So if we have two spheres instead of two masses, so we have a sphere 1 and we have another sphere. Now just like the way we have given in the case of the gravitational force, right, the final result will be minus g m1 m2 by r. So here what is this r? The center to center distance. If we have a sphere and a particle, this is the point mass. Okay, so the r is the distance from point mass to the center of the sphere. Again for this the potential energy will be what? Minus g m1 m2 by r. So m1, let's say, is the mass of the so this is m1 m2 are the mass of the spheres here. So here let us say m1 is the mass of the sphere and m2 is the mass of the point mass particle. The idea is potential energy, right, is for a pair of masses. So potential energy is not for a single particle, it's for the pair of masses that we get the potential energy term. Okay. Now just like if you have a mass kept at a location, let's say the field strength here is E, the force acting on the mass is what? Mass of the particle times the field at the location. So this is the interaction between the field and mass that will give rise to force. Same way, whenever there is a gravitational field in a region, as we already said, right, we use two quantities. One is field strength, which is a vector quantity, already we talked about it. The second quantity that we use to understand the existence of gravitational field is gravitational potential. So what is the idea here? If you have a particle of mass m, we are keeping this at location. Let's say the gravitational potential there is V. Then the gravitational potential energy of the particle, the gravitational potential energy of the particle will be mass of the particle times the potential at the location. So V represents what? The potential. So just like, mass times field strength is what? Force acting on the particle. Mass times potential at the location is what? The potential energy of the particle. So this way we will be able to explain how the field strength and the potential, they will be able to help us in understanding the existence of the gravitational field in a region. So obviously the next question is, whenever we have a new quantity, we want to talk about what is the unit and what is the dimensional formula. So look at the unit. So unit will be what? Potential energy will be what? This is SI unit is kg, this is joule. So V SI unit will be what? Joule per kg. Dimensional formula will be what? Joule means ml square T power minus 2 energy divided by m. So what is it? L square T power minus 2. That is the dimensional formula for the potential. Now we have said the gravitational field strength because of a point mass. Like that we can also tell what is the gravitational potential due to a point mass. So for that what we'll do is we'll take a point mass capital. From that point mass, this is the point mass. Okay, so from that point mass we will mark a point. Here we will bring the test mass. As we already said, right, the test mass will be always small one. We'll keep it here. Now the potential energy, already we have seen the potential energy expression, right? What is the potential energy? It will be minus G capital M small m by R. R is the distance between them. As per the relation, right, if V is the potential at the location where we are keeping the test mass, potential energy will be what? Mass of the test mass times the potential at the location. Small m gets cancelled. So from here we will have the V value. What is the V value? Minus G m by R. So this potential, right, is produced by whom? Test mass. So when you have a test mass, it produces a potential at a distance R. What is the potential value? Minus Gm by R. So one thing we have to keep in mind, potential is it's a scalar quantity. There will be no direction for it. And a mass will always produce a negative potential. This is also important. Any mass, when it is producing a potential, it will be always what? Negative. Because look at the form. Next, if you look at, let's say for example, there is a particle at a location where the potential is V1. And it has to move to a location where the potential is V2. Then here, what is the potential energy of the particle? It will be what? M times V1. In the second location, the potential energy will be M times of V2. So if you want to calculate what is the change in potential energy, will be the final potential energy minus initial potential energy. So we can take M common out. What is it? V2 minus V1. So that is nothing but delta V. So you can see we get one formula here. What is it? The change in potential energy will be equal to what? Mass of the particle times. So when a particle is moving from one place to other place, change in potential energy will be equal to what? Mass of the particle times the change in the gravitational potential value. So what is it? Mass of the particle times the change in the gravitational potential value. So this is another result related to the gravitation potential. And if the particle is moved with a very, very small displacement, then instead of delta V, right, what will come? We will say very small change in potential, that is the dV, like that. Okay. So since we said both gravitational potential as well as the field strength, they both actually do what? They will explain to us how the gravitational field is spread in a particular region, correct? So obvious thing is we want to know if there is a relation between them. Actually there is a relation. Actually, we'll see that there are two final results we will get depending upon the scenario or the situation. We will use either of them. So we will see how the two final results will come. The first thing is, if you have a particle of mass m, the let's say the potential area is V and the field strength is E. What is the gravitational force acting on the particle m times V? If we give a very small displacement dr, the small burden by the gravitational force, it will be equal to what? Force dot product with the displacement. And just now only we saw, right, if the particle is moving means there will be a change in the potential energy. So the small change in potential energy of the particle will be what? M dV. dV is basically the differential change in the gravitation potential. Okay. Now the idea of conservative force or the definition of potential energy for the conservative force comes from which formula? Work done by the conservative force is equal to what? Negative of change in the potential energy. Means, so here we can see m gets cancelled. What is it? We'll have E dot dr is equal to minus dV. So we'll bring the minus to the left side. Minus E dot dr is equal to dV. We'll integrate it. So minus integral E dot dr is equal to what? Integration of dV. dV means what? That will give us a delta V, the overall change in the gravitation potential. So this is what I called as the result 1. So I said, we'll see two results, right? This is the result 1. So what is the result 1? This will be used when, if you have the field strength formula, like E bar is given to us, then negative of, what is it? Negative of E dot dr bar. If you integrate it, right, we will get what? That will give us what is the overall change in the gravitation potential. This is relation 1. Now we will see the relation 2. So from here only we will get the relation 2 also. So look at this. E dot dr means what? E into dr into cos theta. That is equal to minus dV. Okay. So we will just take the dr to the other side. Left side we will have E cos theta is equal to what? Minus dV by dr. So what this basically tells is, if we are giving a displacement of dr, so we'll just rewrite that scenario here. We are giving a displacement of dr in a direction. For that, the corresponding change in the potential is what? dV, small change. This minus dV by dr, right, a negative of change in potential by the distance moved along the direction. It will give us E cos theta. What is E cos theta means? Think of it. Here, let's say E is along this direction. Theta basically is what? The angle between E bar and dr bar. Means E cos theta is what? The component of field along the dr bar direction. So what is E cos theta means? It is the component of the field along the dr bar direction. So if you move in a direction by giving a displacement dr, minus dV by dr will give us what? The component of the field along the direction. Now using this result, this is something that we will again learn in detailed manner when we go to the +2, but here we will just get the final result as to how it is coming. So the result is, if we give a small displacement along the x-axis and see what is the change in the potential value just because of the change in the x coordinate, there that particular derivative type, right, we will be calling it as partial derivative. So what is the derivative going to be called as? Partial derivative. So what is a partial derivative is, if you have the potential function like x square yz, when we say dou v by dou x, the part normally d is what the total derivative, dou partial derivative. When we want to take the partial derivative with respect to x other than x, y or z, we will take them as constants. Means y and z will come out. We will just have what derivative of x square. That is of course what 2x. So the partial derivative is only that particular parameter will be taken as a variable, everything else will be what constant. It's a very simple idea. So if we do minus dou v by dou x, the partial derivative of the potential function with respect to x, negative of that will give us what? The field strength component along the x-axis. So in a way, what is this Ex minus dou v by dou x? What is Ey minus dou v by dou y? We will have to take a partial derivative with respect to y. Along the z, what is it? Minus dou v by dou z. What is overall field strength means? Ex into I plus Ey into j plus Ez into k. So this is the second relation. So the first relation is what? When we know E bar vector, we can find delta V. The second relation is what? When we know the potential function minus dou V by dou x. What is this? Partial derivative with respect to x will give us Ex minus dou V by dou y will give us what? Ey, component along the y direction, minus dou V by dou z will give us what? The partial derivative along the, minus dou V by dou z means what? Negative of partial derivative along the z direction. That will give us what? The gravitational field component along the z direction. Overall field means what? Ex into I plus Ey into j plus Ez into k. So maybe you can look at the past year questions discussion where we have tried solving some problems, particularly while this idea is more common in the electrostatics, the relation between the electric field and electrostatic potential. We can even get questions based on the relation between gravitational potential and gravitational field strength, because it will be similar type of relation. Okay, so now coming to the idea of gravitation potential because of the finite shaped objects. We talked about what is the gravitation potential because of a point mass. What is it? If you have a point mass m at distance r from it, if you mark a location, means the gravitational potential there will be what? Minus gm by r. But what about the spherical shell? If you have a spherical shell, right, we will just look at the results here. Again, shell means we will mark three locations: outside, on the surface, inside. Field outside, what is it? If you mark a point outside, means always smaller is what? Distance that we measure from the center of the shell to the location. So outside, what is the value? It will be what? Minus gm by small r. Now one thing is, a spherical shell can be also known by the name hollow sphere. So spherical shell or hollow sphere, both are same. On the surface means what? The smaller value becomes capital R. What is it? Minus gm by r. Inside, when we mark any point inside, the potential value will be same everywhere. So you can check our detailed video on how this result will come. Any point inside. So any point inside you take, the potential value will be same and equal to the potential on the surface. Just look at what is the potential surface, minus gm by capital R, right? Same value. Why this happens is, look at it. So I'll just give a quick idea. So what is this? Minus E dot dr is equal to what? Integral. That is equal to what? dv or delta v. The change in the gravitation potential, right? Now think of it. From the surface, let's say we are marking the initial point on the surface. This is the initial. From the surface, when we are trying to move inside, what is the field inside? Shell theorem, right? What is the field inside? 0. So the integration value will be 0, right? Integration 0 means delta v will be 0. So wherever you choose your final point, right? Delta v 0 means what? Potential at the initial point is same as potential at the final point. So that is the reason why at a point inside, potential is everywhere same. What is it? Equal to the potential on the surface of the shell. Now with regard to the solid sphere, outside if you mark a point means let's say r is the distance from the center of the sphere. What is the potential value? Minus gm by small r. This value will be same as the result for the shell. On the surface, again the value of smaller will become equal to capital R. What is it? Minus gm by capital R. This is also same. But inside, because remember the field strength inside is not zero for the solid sphere. Remember what is the value of the field strength? Gm into small r by capital R cube. Field will be always towards the center of the sphere. Okay. When we do the derivation, right, so we'll get the final result as, this is the important one. So the final result as minus gm by 2r into 3 minus small r by capital R whole square. So here the thing that we need to keep in mind is at the center, and by the way this result will come when we use this minus integral e dot dr is equal to what? Delta v. Here at the center, if you take mean, center means what? Smaller is equal to 0. So put smaller is equal to this will vanish. What is it? Minus 3gm by 2r. So that's like what? Minus 1.5 times gm by r. What is gm by r? The potential on the surface. So potential at the center, right? Center of the sphere is what? 1.5 times the potential on the surface, because potential on surface is what? Minus gm by r. Potential at the center is what? 1.5 times potential on the surface. Okay, so this is another important result, but this formula, right, what is it? Potential at a point inside, it will not be same everywhere. It will be what? Minus gm by 2r into 3 minus small r by capital R the whole square. So just check the derivation in our detailed video how this comes. This basically will come by using this result. I mean the relation between the gravitational field strength and the potential. Okay, so this is about the relation between the gravitational field strength and potential, and how do we get the gravitational potential values because of a hollow sphere and a solid sphere. Again, so one more other important shape is the ring. Already we have seen what is the field strength due to a ring at a point on the axial line. Potential at a point on the axial line, so we take a ring of radius a, we mark a point on the axis, distance r. Potential will be minus gm by root of a square plus r square. If we take the center point means what? Smaller will be 0. Then what is it? Minus gm by a. The potential at the center point will be what? Minus gm by a. So this is about the gravitational potential due to the ring. So one thing we can understand here, always the gravitational potential will be what? Negative. So this is about the first part of the gravitation topic. In the second part, right, we will start with the idea of binding energy, escape velocity, and we'll have to cover the satellite motion, orbital velocity, and the energy of satellite, etc., and also the Kepler's laws. We'll see in the second part video.